All right. Okay, we should be recording now. Okay, and you're grabbing the seat, that works, cool. So, I'll let you introduce yourself, Bill, and
all right. Should we have an opening prayer?
we should have an opening prayer.
I should have an opening prayer. So the offer the opening prayer.
Absolutely.
Our Father in heaven, we're so grateful for this time that we can get together to learn more about evacuations plan. We're so grateful for the program that the church provides for us that we can learn and prepare ourselves. And as we prepare for ourselves, we'll fear not. And that we'll be able to not only help ourselves and our family, but help those who are in need. We ask you to bless our presenter, Brother Monroe and Sister Williams, that they will to share the message with us, that we will to utilize them and help ourselves to be ready. And we pray in thy Son Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
All right. I am Brother Bill Monroe. I am from Surrey 3rd Ward. I'm in the Surrey Stake. I serve on both preparedness the ward level. What qualifies me is, to start off when I was younger, is a venture group. We were training in search and rescue. We actually got certified for Kananaskis country, so that provides a lot of fun training, what you're doing, how you deal with things. Later on, after I turned about the same time period, I joined the volunteer fire department, Barron's, Alberta. Now, that seems kind of funny, but there's a lot of different kinds of training also in the fire department. Again, it deals mainly with disasters. Somebody's life is going to potash, and you're there to help stop it. Later on, I joined a operational rescue unit, and that basically took me throughout the world: floods, fires, war zones, earthquakes, you name it. We were there a couple days after it took place. We stayed for several days. I was a medic in this time period, but we also did dig outs and other things. And later on, I actually got out of that, but they prepared me for a life of trying to help people, understanding evacuations, understanding what's going to happen, why it's going to happen. I've actually seen it all firsthand, which makes it a little bit different than most people. I also really like doing this kind of stuff. So like getting stuff like a pocket chainsaw and dealing with different equipment. I like to see what will take, will not take, and actually talk to people about it.
Okay, so I'm Patricia Williams. I have nowhere near the same amount of qualifications, but preparedness is a decent hobby of mine. My parents joined the church because of food storage. So from food storage, it's not part of preparedness. I have been poking at this off and on for many a year. I am a member, well, I guess we call it a friend of Prepper Broadcasting Network, because I am not one of the broadcasters, though I am known to most of them, and we will actually have one of them come on in July as part of our discussion. So I've been practicing, learning a lot, but not actually implementing.
Is that a local group?
No, that is American. And they are a Prepper Broadcasting Network, or PBN, is a bunch of podcasters all across the United States, and they have different focuses. So there's generally a broadcast every day of some nature, and it depends on who you're listening to, what their focus is. Like there's the Matter of Facts podcast, which is every Monday, and as they say that we do prepping guns and politics. That's their interest.
Do what, sorry?
Prepping guns and politics. But that's his interest. There is another guy who does, and I forget what the name of the podcast now is, but the guy who does the podcast is an author, and he worked in the US prison system. So they talk about laws and how laws are affecting the prison system. What is the attitude of people who have been in those systems and how it affects things. You've got the Changing Earth podcast, which is now doing monthly. That happens on Saturday. And they talk about, well, one, she's an author. So in addition to writing her books, she writes, she's doing what they call the audio portion. So they actually get a lot of other people to act out parts of her books. And hey, it works, and they're still trying to get it actually into a TV show. She's negotiating that, but she does Changing Earth. So for Changing Earth, it is literally, here are fires, here are earthquakes. This is what's going on and what's weird and wacky weather-wise in the world. Let's see.
So who are we getting in July?
We are getting James Moulton, who actually owns the network. He runs, what is it? He renamed it? It used to be I Am Liberty, but he's renamed the podcast to Surviving America.
That's, it could be all kinds of things.
That could be all kinds of things, but and we'll actually let's wander on to the next slide. So he is going to be doing routines, goals, and challenges in July, because one of the things he does as part of the network is, and they're running a challenge right now, which is called Ration or Ruin, which is he and a couple of the other podcasters, Ben and Dan, who actually run a financial one on Thursdays, they are running, can we survive on our rations? What does it do to us? We're fasting every other day and all the weekends. What does this do to us? What's our energy level? How do we feel? Do we have to change what we're doing? So that's actually the challenge they're running right now. They're in week 2 of a 4-week challenge of Ration or Ruin. And the part of the ration is, I think they are restricted to 2,000 calories a day for the days they eat. And they are trying the major known survival of foods like Ready Wise. They just finished Ready Wise. I think this next week they're doing Mountain House. And so they're comparing back and forth. This is what we get for this amount of money. Do I like it? Do I not? What's worth it? So that's their current challenge. But the challenge they often do is for James. James is very much into, it's great you've got stuff. What's your body doing? Are you actually healthy? Which is why it's like he's running that, not me. Because I don't exercise anywhere near as much as I should. And I know it. But he will do monthly challenges on that. So he will be talking, and I will have to confirm, because we spoke several months ago, on how to start challenging yourself to do things. Let's look at the rest of this. Actually, next month, we have to find out if we are in this building or a different one. It will be on June 21st, and it's Making Home Disaster Ready. What can you do to help your home? Like anchoring bookshelves and things like that. And then August 16th, we haven't quite decided. I might do water. We'll see what people are interested in. We are still running the survey. So if there is something that you're interested in what we've listed, or if we haven't listed something, because what we listed is what we know and we can teach, which is why James is teaching the challenges, but it wasn't listed because that's not something Bill and I personally know.
The QR code get them to the challenge or the survey?
That QR code will get them to the survey, and the link to the survey is also on there. So let's go to the next one. Let's pass you your tablet.
Awesome.
So broadcasting and all this good. Cool. If you could close the door, oh good, someone got the door, because we do have other events in here. So. Let us chat. Importance of evacuation planning. You got, nope, you're on the next one. So. Let me tell you a tale. In 2017, California fine arts photographer Norman Quintana was planning a trip to her native Puerto Rico to document Hurricane Maria's destruction. Instead, she and her family found herselves caught in another natural disaster much closer to home. Beginning in early October, the atmosphere ripped through Napa County, burning tens of thousands of acres and lasting weeks. As Quintana and her family evacuated their home, she managed to grab one of her many cameras, not realizing she'd never see the rest. The smoke was uber thick, and we left with our autos. We took the contents of our safety deposit box, not much, passports, etc. Then I managed to run into my studio and grab my, and she names a specific camera with one lens. If you're a photographer, you know that cameras have multiple lenses that you use for specialization. When we were finally able to return to the property, everything was gone. Her home of nearly 30 years, her studio, her photographs, her prints, and her collections of 100 cameras. Basically, her livelihood was gone. So the question, if her family had an evacuation plan, would they have been able to grab more than one camera?
Depending what was important to them, obviously.
Okay. So, over to you.
In every home, there has to be, in every emergency, there has to be one person that's appointed. Normally, it's the patriarch of the family. If there is a decision that has to be made, it will fall onto that person to make it. That's kind of part about being an appointment. One of the easiest ways to come up with an evacuation plan is to first know what can happen around you. That will require an evacuation. Every scenario will differ, and every place will, every plan differs. This could be earthquake, it could be a fire, it could be a flood, it could be a gas leak. Everyone will differ ever so slightly. Every home will differ. So the people in it, the pets in it, floor layouts, everything is different in every home. So not one plan fits all. You have to customize it to your own home. Part of the plan should be another province contact. I have my uncle in Alberta. And if that doesn't work, I've got a couple people in Ontario I can also call, and everybody knows to call them. So one of the things you should also include in this is who needs assistance? Do you have elderly? Do you have a handicapped person? Do you have somebody that needs help? Who's responsible for doing that? Who grabs the pets? Who grabs the kits? Who grabs the pets? Where are your exits? And there should be at least 2 exits in every room.
Another slide. Exit slide's a different one. In fact, here we go, the exit slide. Okay,
There should be at least 2 exits. I'll count your seconds. So the first would be your door. Where's your second one? Is it a window? Is it something you're going to kick in? And make sure each family member can open the locks and doors and latches. It can be on the second floor, so you may need an emergency ladder. You may need a rope to rappel out, whatever you choose to. Check to see if all the windows are not painted shut, which just makes me chuckle when people say, yeah, we got a window, but they've never checked it and they painted it shut.
paint is surprisingly sticky.
It's strong.
Have you ever tried to open a painted shut window? It's, you have to get in there with the knife and break it first. It's not going to shift on its own.
Another one is security bars. I've actually been in a home where they actually have them locked from the inside underneath. And like I asked the question, where's the key to the padlock? They said, oh, it's out in the living room. It's like, well, it doesn't do me any good if you got to escape. Well, they did change that as far as I know. They should have quick releases that can be opened from the inside. Make sure everybody knows how to do that. Well, just assume everybody can. Hold a family fire drill during the day, when everybody's awake and alert and ready to do something. The second drill should be at night, when children are asleep, just to see how they react. Yes, you're probably gonna be a little grumpy, but it also tells you how are they gonna react? What do you need to adjust in your plan for you?
Yeah, let's go on. So, you mentioned, let's talk, plan and prepare. Your evacuation plan, your kits, and valuables, and how are you getting there? So first, your evacuation plan. Do you know where you're going? Do you have a place that, if you're going somewhere and you're not directed by someone, if you're directed by someone, that's a different story. But if you're choosing to evacuate ahead of everyone, which we'll cover a bit later, do you know where you're going? Do you know what your routes are that you're going to be doing to take there? Do you have your emergency kit close to an exit so you can grab it on your way out? And be sure that this kit is your binder. You know, that binder we talked about last month, and have water and food in it. And then preserve and protect any valuables and documents. Copies of your documents should be in your binder. But your valuables could be things like heirlooms, special to the family pictures. What you need to do is decide now what you consider valuable. I looked for a story, could not find it, but I remember this story ages ago. So probably 20 years ago, I was told the story, and it probably happened a good 10 years before that. There was a fire. People were told, you have 30 minutes to get out. One family had lots of valuable stuff. They weren't sure what they needed. So they grabbed all of the stuff and they piled it in the living room, and they were going back and getting more, and getting more. And they ran out of time. So they had to leave with the pile in the middle of the living room, eventually taking nothing with them. That's where a plan of, this is valuable, this comes with me. Who gets it, when do they get it, etc. And then, is your vehicle in good repair? Does it have gas in it? There have been evacuations where, well, I told the story the last time where the LA fires, mother was trying to leave, her gas tank was pretty close to empty, tree came down in front of her, she had to turn around, and that's when the empty gas can, empty tank light came on. And it's like, how are you getting out of there with your gas tank on full with kids in the car? You don't want to do that. Try as much as possible to drive on the top half of your tank.
Another story about that is also like Fort Mac. There was an evacuation order. They got many people lined up at the gas station. Find out they didn't have time or they were already out of gas. Many people were leaving their cars on the side of the road to be burned. Later on, a tanker did come along, giving people free tanks of gas just to get them going again. So if they had already been prepared, they'd have already been in the next city without a worry. They wouldn't have lost everything.
Your friend's story. Can you tell your friend's story?
Oh, yes. Fort Nelson. I have a friend that lives up there. She actually watched the transformer explode just outside of her house. She got a bang on the door half hour. Get out now. You don't have a choice. Her car wasn't exactly in the best repair. She did have a few issues, but she did make it down to Fort Mac. She had no documents with her. She didn't grab anything. So that made it a little tough when you're trying to deal with government. Prove who you are, prove what you got, prove this is the binder type deal. She did eventually get some help with it. Now coming home, she had no money with her. She had no nothing. So she was talking to people just to get money transferred to her. So that also, like I said, where your binder comes in. You have extra cash in it. Do you have everything with you? The kit and your binder are the most important, some of the most important things you'll keep with you other than this.
When it comes to cash, is there any kind of recommendation, like how much should you kind of have?
I keep $200 with me, but it's some smaller bills. During a disaster, don't expect to change that.
Yeah.
It might cost $5 and you give it 20, chances are it's cost you $20.
Sorry, how much did you say?
I keep 200 with me.
200, okay,
I know 200 in fuel will get me to Alberta and a little bit of running around in Alberta.
okay, okay,
And it'll also pay for some food and a few other things on it.
okay.
Any more questions?
I'll just add to that. You don't necessarily have to keep the cash in your kit or in your binder. It's good to have cash in your kit or in your binder, but have cash in your wallet. My husband went to buy something. I warned him there was something funky going on with the credit cards. He had to turn around and come back because he literally had no cash on him. I, on the other hand, I'm a little bit more paranoid. I have cash in my wallet. I have cash in this, which holds my cell phone. Used to call it mad money. Back from when I was in university, if I ever dated, and I wasn't that great at dating, but you know, it was there in case I went out with a group and something went wrong and I wanted to get home. I had cash on me to get me home, and I kept doing that since that time. So I still have my mad money cash on.
I keep mine in my wallet, but mine's on my hand. I keep about $100, $150, I think, any given point in time, well, just for such an event. Take a look when the power goes out, or it was a year and a half, 2 years ago, when the banks suddenly stopped working. No transactions could be made, it was only cash only. It's not as hard as it doesn't happen often, but when it does, it's a real problem.
Okay. We're now getting out of the house and securing the house.
How many people have ever evacuated before? Say 2, 3. How many people know of somebody that's evacuated? How much of a problem was that? Just evacuating, did you actually know all the steps to take? No. Most people don't, because they've never, again, something they've never practiced, never thought of. But one of the biggest things is do you know where your shutoffs are? If you're evacuating, such as they've asked you to evacuate, but shut off your electricity, shut off your water, shut off your gas, etc., etc. Do you know how to do that? Even in a small event, like, oh, gee, we had a small earthquake. Can you shut off your water so it doesn't just flood your house? You got a gas leaks, whatever took place, somebody hit a gas line, or can you shut your gas off? Everything will fail eventually. You know where your main shutoff for your electricity is. Those are just smaller items, much less when something big happens.
Actually, wandering over to water, in the event of an emergency and something is happening to corrupt the water lines, if you can shut off your water fast enough, your hot water tank will still have clean potable water in it if you shut off the mains. And then you can drain whatever the size of your water tank is as water. It hasn't yet been corrupted if you know about it ahead of time, quick enough that you can turn off the water. But one of the things that I've got in the picture, these happen to be my shutoffs. The electrical panel, pretty obvious. It's the big breaker, either at the bottom or the top of the panel. The gas, you can't tell so much in that picture, but that's hidden behind the hot water tank. So unless you know to go in behind the hot water tank to look for, I believe that's a pressure regulator, and the switch that is close to it, you're not going to know how to shut off your gas, because if you look at that picture, there's another switch close by that actually shuts off the hot water tank rather than the whole house. And then the water itself, that's my water that I actually had moved, because when I moved into my house, I had to replace the gray pipe with new pipe, because the gray pipe was old and is no longer covered by insurance. The poly Bs. So I had my house gutted and all of the pipes replaced. And as part of that, they were kind enough to move my water shut off to right beside the trap door for my crawl space. Because previous to that, my water shut off was 10 feet into the crawl space, and I would have to crawl to it. This is right under the trap door, and I can lift up the trap door, lean down, and turn it off. But you might have to go looking if you've got a crawl space to see how far you have to crawl.
Another thing is also keep the tools close by. So nobody's gonna turn your gas off by hand. You need a tool for that. Is there one close by for that? Normally I just would hang a wrench right beside it. Nobody's gonna mess with it. It's highly unlikely.
Yep. Okay, so I'm going to quickly wander back to the previous slide. Sometimes you're not told to turn off the mains. Sometimes you get out before a main turn off order occurs. It's wise to unplug your smaller appliances, because if something happens, you're not damaging those appliances with any electrical spikes. You want to leave your fridges and freezers plugged in, because you want those to hopefully keep working. But your smaller electronics, your computers, if you lose power and there's a spike as it comes back on, you will lose those. So as a precaution, unplug them. Or if you're a computer geek like me, you have a UPS and that's your sacrificial device. But if you don't have that, consider unplugging your smaller devices before you leave.
Just a little side note to that. If you lose your power during the day and you have a bunch of stuff on, when the power goes out, you may want to remember to turn it all off and unplug it, because the power comes back on at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Everything comes back on.
Yes.
We've had that. We used to live in a place that had quite often the power went out.
Yeah.
And yeah, when everything turned back on at 2 o'clock in the morning, and
All your lights come
Yeah,
on
lights
and
come on,
things
the
are
TV.
beeping
Yeah.
and
anyway, just a little side note.
yep.
Now, when you actually leave, here's a thought for you, just to make sure your freezer, how long your freezer's been unplugged. So just to tell you don't get food poisoning, have yourself a jar or something with frozen water in it, and always have a penny on top. Now, if you come home and the penny is still on top, the freezer stayed frozen for a long time. But if the penny's at the bottom of the can, the jar, whatever you have, it's been unplugged long enough where you could possibly get food poisoning out of anything you purchase.
Yeah, because your water has thawed. Okay. The last thing on this slide is muster station. So you're out of the house. Where are you going? Make sure that everyone knows where you're going if you're heading out ahead of time. Choose a common place that everyone will find.
I have a couple roommates, and one of the first days they arrived, and we actually made a plan. Where are we going to meet at? Our case is just up the street at a Bubble Tea House. That's a great place. It's away from everything, but we're still close by, where if they still need us, we are still right close by. And we can all be accounted for in a heartbeat.
Okay. Moving on to work and schools disasters. Okay. Your natural disasters and emergencies most likely won't be convenient when you're at home. So you might be at work, your kids might be at school. Your work should have a disaster plan, an evacuation plan, a muster point. The schools will have the same thing. Do you know what your school's evacuation plan is? Where your kids are supposed to be going? Who needs to pick them up? Because in a case like that, they're not going to let a random adult come and pick the kid up. It's got to be generally you or your husband or someone else you designate for that. So if, say, you're in Vancouver, your kids are in school in Surrey, and the bridge has gone down, but your sister might be in Surrey, your sister can't pick your kid up unless your sister is a designated adult who can do that.
Make sure you let them know that ahead of time, and if you can, a picture. This person can pick them up. And if you have to, this person and this person cannot have their picture there for that too.
I have a question, like, both my parents live in seniors facilities, one's long-term care, one's independent living. Is it responsible, well, obviously the long-term care one, it's a responsibility of the facility to have some kind of a plan for their, would that be the same kind of with I don't know, for independent living, like these types of facilities, would they have evacuation plans and?
Every place that actually deals with people does have an evacuation plan. If it's a steady staff, they will have a plan of some sort put together. They may not say it to everybody, but they do have a plan. It may not hurt to go ask them, hey, what is the evacuation plan in the event of blank? Sometimes they forget to practice them. It never hurts to have somebody just poke them a little bit. Hey, did you do this?
Like this building has an evacuation plan. For my building, I'm at the Temple View Chapel. Should the alarm goes off, we gather at the pavilion, which is further down the road. We don't gather at the temple, which, you know, people might think, oh, we go to the temple. No, we gather at the pavilion. So that's one of the things to know is what is your building's evacuation plan? Where do you muster? I think for here, it's that parking lot.
Most places that you go to work at will also have fire marshals. That's some rule wrong with what it is, but basically all it does is there's a designated person goes through each and every room, and they usually have a few designated room, designated hall, making sure the place is clear and everybody is out. That is their primary job, unless of course there's an earthquake and things going around there, and they're just going to leave with everybody else. But a fire alarm, et cetera, they're going room by room, building by building, closing everything off, making sure everybody is gone.
Now, if you are in a public location like this, and you're to evacuate, grab your personal belongings on the way out the door, because you may not be able to come back into the building. So you definitely want to make sure that your car keys are on you, among other things. So if you need to leave, you actually can leave.
And if you need to move your car, or the fire department wants you to move it, you can actually do that.
Okay.
Any questions? Nope. Okay.
All right, we are now on to the drill. So, you want to talk about drill, or you got drill?
Where am I?
All right, I'll start with what you had. So, hold a family fire drill during the day when everyone's awake, as he mentioned, and a second drill at night to see what your groggy little kids are going to do. And then keep doing it so you're in practice. Tell your guests or visitors to your home what your family fire escape plan is, because they might not know that the window is about a valid option. And when staying overnight at other people's homes, ask about how you're going to get out of this room in case there's a fire. And if they don't have a plan, offer to help make them one. If you're staying there overnight, they are probably your friends. You would like them to get out too. And this is particularly important when you've got kids who are going over for a sleepover. Do they know how to get out?
It's also a nice fun event if you can actually share that with your friends and families. They go, this is what we do, run through it. And as you go over to their house, well, what is your plan? I'll run you through it. You know, you might want to change this and change that. And my little Johnny here is.
They don't invite you back.
So is there anything that block or might hold you back in the event of emergency? Look inside and outside the house, like bushes, tools, the good old, roller skate to trip over and go flying. Anything that might cause you harm. And then your neighbors, do they have a plan? And have a chat with others about if you have to get out, if planning to stay at a friend's house, make sure they know that you're planning to stay at their house and get all of that cleared ahead of time. And then, as mentioned, drill. Now, we did mention people on the Prepper Broadcasting Network. Bill Radley, he runs the Matter of Facts podcast, which I spoke about. And he and his wife, Jillian, were at home. And I think their daughter Piper was probably about 8 years old. They ran drills. They knew what their jobs were. So Jillian is in the kitchen with her brother cooking something, and they set off the fire alarm. Next thing you know, there is this little 8-year-old making like the road runner out the house to the mailbox. Because if the fire alarm goes off, she is to be out of the house. That is her job. Her mother is to follow her. Phil clears the house and deals with the problem. Completely threw the rest of the family because they did not know that that was the drill. And they found out when the 8-year-old left and could care less about them because her job was to get out of the house. Okay, getting out of the city.
How many people here have ever thought about evacuating the city? 1, 2.
Maybe since last week.
Yeah, exactly. Evacuating is not, everybody takes a little thought, oh yeah, I'll just drive on the highway. Not always that easy. Take a look what happened when 2001. Not as easy as everybody thought. Well, the number one's now blocked, it's underwater, it's under what, 40 feet of water.
Oh, look at old floods in Abbotsford.
That was fun. Then the Coquihalla was broken down and it was quite a mess out there for quite a while. But in a lot of cases during a disaster, you're most likely going to be staying in place unless you get orders. Like if some, I know I'm
Wandering
jumping,
ahead.
I just
Yeah.
touched it, yeah.
Okay. So getting out of the city, what to wear, your neighbors, routes, and hazards. So if you know you're getting out and you have time to prepare, wear sturdy shoes as opposed to something that will pinch your feet after a couple hours.
And I also recommend with your shoes, be steel-toed and if you can shank, or at least moisture resistant.
And be aware that those are very heavy. Those are sitting in my 72-hour kit and they may live there for a while yet. If I feel like exercising, I will probably go running with those shoes because I'm sure they're 5 pounds each. But they are a safety shoe, which means if I step on something, it's not going to go through my foot. I don't have to deal with any of that nasty stuff.
I actually wear mine are constant, are always steel-toed shoes and shanks. Mine are just sitting away right.
So is it still recommended to like have shoes in your bedroom? Like,
Yep.
Yeah, so that if earthquake windows broke, you've got a pair of shoes, right? Because
Yeah.
we would have to go down 2 flights of stairs to get
Yeah.
our shoes.
Well, shoes or slippers or something so you're not running around in bare feet.
Keep them in the shoebox you actually bought them in. This way when the glass explodes, it doesn't fill your shoes also. You just tip the box up, get your shoes up, put them on, or your slippers or sandals or whatever turns you on that you want.
I was just gonna say, I remember having a conversation with President Harrington when he was still here. And he worked downtown as a banker, wore a suit to work every day. But he was worried about this, so he had his emergency kit in the trunk of his car along a pair of hiking boots in case the road was blocked and he had to walk all the way back one way rock from Vancouver and not have to be wearing his dress shoes.
I have an old pair of sneakers that is sitting in the wheel well of my car in case I ever go somewhere where I'm wearing a dress shoe rather than my sneakers. It's a very good idea. Yeah. Okay, and along with that, what?
Sorry, I
Oh.
just wanted to add something just with having the shoes is to make sure that they're broken into as well.
Yeah.
They're not just new.
Oh, yes.
That does
Wearing
help.
them for maybe a month or so before you put them away, because otherwise they're gonna have blisters very soon.
Yeah, absolutely. These are well-worn sneakers. If I retire a sneaker when it's before destruction, that's when it lands in the car. I am known to wear things to destruction, at which point it's not suitable for that.
Walking on the side.
Yeah. But the other things is long pants. You want to wear long pants, long sleeve shirt if you have something, and a hat to cover anything coming down at you.
And recommend with your pants, right, like they're a jean or a jogger. The jean will take more abuse, a lot more, well, they'll stop nails a lot easier than a jogger.
When I was a co-op student, I worked at Motorola. And we were working on racks and things like that, and I had dress pants on. So I crouched down to, next to a piece of equipment. And after that, I ever so carefully wore my jacket around my waist until I could go home, because the sharp edge of that piece of equipment went right through the dress pants. And they were a goner. Went right through a bit of me too. It was a very sharp piece of equipment. Wouldn't have gone through this quite as much.
A story, this is a little bit back to when we were kids, just to show you the strength of genes. My brother was riding a motorbike. He was chasing gophers and he flipped his bike. His friend on the back. So my brother lands, the motorbike lands on him, the friend lands on the bike.
Ouch.
Now, they both got off, and my brother knew there was something wrong, but the peg had gone into his leg. These were brand new jeans. 3 washes later, there was a hole in those. If he would have been wearing something like joggers or shorts, it would have probably ripped the muscles right out of his leg. As is, it just tore it into it, but the jeans held on to it. It stretched the jeans right out of shape.
Okay, if you do have to evacuate the city, now that we've covered what to wear, and if you're friendly with your neighbors and you have room in your vehicle, check with your neighbors to see if they need a ride. Because not everyone has a vehicle that they can go somewhere with. And when you're dealing with an evacuation, your buses aren't working.
It's a very easy assumption to assume everybody has a vehicle. It seems like everybody does, but not everybody does. Or one that's not in really good repair, or one that's got some issues. So it never hurts to check, even if they got 50 vehicles outside.
And then if you are actually under an official evacuation, follow your recommended evacuation route. Don't take shortcuts, because the shortcuts may be blocked off or something. And then you want to be alert for road hazards such as washed out roads, bridges, or down power lines. You don't want to be driving into flooded areas. And then if you are on an evacuation route and you are driving that, be patient. You want to tell Linton's story?
Linton. How many people remember Linton from a couple of years ago? 1, 2. Linton is a small reserve town, well, a couple thousand people. It was dang near 50 degrees outside. There was a wind blowing. From the time from first smoke to the entire town being absolutely engulfed was 15 minutes. Yeah, the band had a plan in place. Without the help of the province or the feds, they just activated. Everybody got out alive. Now that's saying something that is quite a feat, especially if you've ever been to Linton, how just where it's located. It's located in a small valley, and there's only one road in. But they lost the entire city almost. The only thing that's standing was brick foundations.
LA fires, your contrast.
LA fires, as we were talking earlier, Los Angeles there. That fire that just happened a few months ago, that actually took place in 2 small cities, suburbs just off of Los Angeles, and they weren't very far apart. They had no plan in place. They had nothing ready to go. There was some loss of life. Nobody knew where to go, so everybody's just scrambling like a bombshell just went off, just any which direction they could. And as we were saying, they were going to a place, and the fire jumped the road. Now, where do you go? Nobody knew where to go. And this is also where you come back to your vehicle is in good shape because it have a full tank of gas. Because that can end very tragically if you don't.
So for the LA fire, the wildfires forced more than 200,000 to evacuate, destroyed more than 18,000 homes and structures, and burned over 57 acres of land in total. For comparison, actually 57 acres was 230 square kilometers. So
57,000 acres.
yeah. 57,000 acres, right, 23,000 hectares. Okay, for comparison, Surrey is 316 square kilometers. So basically it took out about what, 2/3 of Surrey. And no one knew what they were doing.
Surrey, I think, is the largest city in BC.
Okay, so now we're on to disaster response routes, which is not the same as an evacuation route. Over there
I'll just
first.
make another comment about some of the, like during an evacuation, I've been involved in several evacuations with work, and the last one that we did was a big fire in West Kelowna. We had to evacuate this community, about 5,000 people that live in this community. There's only one going in and out. You drive into West Kelowna, there's the sawmill right at the top of the hill. Glen Rosa is the community that's there's only one way. You have to come down the highway. But what you aren't expecting is how people react to those scenarios. There's some that are great and they're helpful. They're helping their neighbors. They're doing it. They're easy to deal with. And then there's the people who are panicking, completely unreasonable, and driving down the wrong side of the road. They have to go back and get their boat. They have to go back and get the motorcycle. You know what it like? There's a lot of this negative and panicky attitude, and you have to be ready. And the other thing was masks. I was thinking when we were talking.
Yeah.
If you're in a fire area, having to sit in smoke and everything that comes along with it is super uncomfortable. Lots of sore throats, lots of burning eyes.
Something I never actually thought that I should mention was how many people have a mask in their car.
I mean, like the masks
like a
we were
regular
wearing originally.
Yeah, left over from COVID.
Sure.
Yeah,
They don't help a lot with smoke. They're
Right.
They're okay, but you get like these 3M ones with the canisters. They're not very
Yeah.
expensive. They're the best because then you can actually breathe.
That's actually the ones I have, the one with the canisters. And you get different kinds of filters for that too. Ones that can really suck out everything to, it just basically sucks out smoke. And it helps if you actually learn how to use it, so wear it once in a while. It's a little bit uncomfortable because you are taking a little bit deeper breath to just try and suck air through the filter. But after you get used to it, they work wonderfully.
I had a sore throat for like a month.
I can believe that.
One night.
Okay, disaster response routes.
Disaster response routes. You know, does anybody know how to identify the disaster response?
Triangle?
Triangle lines,
with what?
it's a kind of a triangle. And it says disaster response.
But isn't that for emergency vehicles or?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what we want to clarify, is a disaster response route is not necessarily an evacuation route. Evacuation route is one that they designate, this is where you go. A disaster response route, well, I'll let you go through it, but don't assume it's the same thing.
A little bit of background on that. In 1995, BC was the first one to actually implement this here. We were first in something. Let's see. So what's going to happen during a disaster when it is, basically we're all going to stay at home. That's what's going to happen. Police are going to come up, they're going to barricade off all these. And the only ones that are supposed to be on those roads are the ones with the designated, either it's on their hanger, placard on their hanger, it's on their license, or they have some sort of paperwork saying that they are supposed to be on the road. It's usually for the fire trucks, the ambulances, e-com, those kind of people. Emergency, I used to have something similar to it on my license because I was responsible. But those would be the only people that are supposed to be on that road for it's about 72 hours. It gives them time to go home, deal with their family, and go back to work. Now,
So then the rest of us just stay at home
Yeah,
or stay where we are.
or stay where you are.
unless
Where
you're,
you're told.
unless you were ordered to leave.
Yeah.
That's,
Okay, so just a quick look at the map. That is the last published map I could get of the disaster response routes. They aren't publishing them anymore. They reserve the right to designate anything they need as a disaster response route. But it used to be major highways, major roads were your disaster response routes. So that was the last one that they officially published, and that was hard to find. Evacuation.
how many people have ever planned or thought about evacuating? One. We like you. All right, so one of the first thing is have your family have an evacuation plan. It's not actually that hard, but one thing I will actually say, when you're planning a route, and this is coming from a guy who goes into this kind of stuff, well, I used to go into this kind of stuff, was take a look at the bridges, the overpasses, the trees, the retaining walls, the rock walls are just everywhere. Culverts, take a look at that, even if you're going from here to Port Callis, just count the amount of all that kind of stuff when you're planning a route. Not as easy as you think when something takes place. And in the event of all this taking place, as an example of disaster, let's say they let you go after an earthquake, so just get out. There's going to be an engineer at every place, and they have to inspect the walls, they have to inspect the culverts, everything, to make sure that you can actually pass over. I was caught up near, just off Blue Moon, and ice block let loose, hit the bridge. They shut the bridge down for the night. I was right after when they did that. The next morning, the engineer, we thought it looked great, and nothing. And everybody said, "Oh yeah, probably just go right away." But in the morning, the engineer got up, got there, walked across the bridge, took one look under the bridge, and wouldn't walk back across that. Yeah. So just because it looks all right doesn't mean it is. The engineers have to inspect that. When I was running goods into anything, that was one thing we had engineers running. If they shut it down, Bailey bridges, alternate routes, a stabilization, all sorts of things that may have to take place before you. Oh, so keep that in mind. So when you plan a route, take a look for all this kind of stuff. I think I just got ahead of myself.
Not quite. You covered major, and now we're talking, poorly lit, narrow paths, heavy traffic and congestion, and hazardous material facilities.
And we use where I live. Hazardous material, I can't go east. I've got 2 tank farms. You'll know this too. It's tough going west or east because again, I've got a refinery just right there. So the only way we can go is north and south. South would be our only way to go. So that's a couple of things you got to keep an eye on. And then there's also SFU. Will that mountain come down and give you a little push? So finding stuff like that.
You want to talk about power lines?
Seems when you see all these disasters on TV, honestly, one of the biggest things that seems to be the congestion. Everybody's trying to get out.
This is Fort McMurray, by the way, trying to get out of Fort McMurray.
Power lines. This I learned from personal experience. We were sent into a area in Florida, and we thought we were lost. I was in a convoy of 3, and the radios just weren't doing what we needed to do. So we got out, and we were talking to each other face to face right at the center truck. We heard the line humming. The power lines were humming. Now most people would think, "Oh yeah, it's just a power line humming," but what that is the power lines are stretched so tight that they're actually vibrating. And just as we were talking, we heard one let go. Well, that cut the top couple feet off my truck from front to back, and it didn't even slow that line down. Now, needless to say, it scared the crap out of us. But it's something I always want to keep in mind. What kind of dangers are around you? Rock wall, power lines, all this kind of stuff is quite a thing to keep an eye on.
Coquihalla Highway damage and how it opened.
Okay, the Coquihalla, we remember that from the floods, right? What most people missed was all the damage that took place. That happened in November. It was almost a month later before it was essential traffic, which is the supply chain, trucks, something dealing with trucks. That was the only thing that was allowed on that for a month. If you were in a car, they sent you back home. Go away. We don't need you here right now. So that was the 1, the 3, and the 5 were all damaged. 5 is the Coquihalla. It was the worst damage. They actually had places where it was washed right off the bridges, or at least the on-ramps. Another month later, they allowed regular cars to go, but wanted you to use essential traffic. It's over. It was almost a year and a half. It was 2 years before they got the Coquihalla completely open and ready to go without any problems. Keep that in mind when you're also traveling. A lot of things can shut you down.
So when to evacuate? When you've got Natural disasters, earthquakes, wildfires, floods, hurricanes. Okay, earthquake you're not going to be able to predict. But wildfires, unless it starts near you, you know it's coming. Get out ahead of everyone. If you think you might evacuate, that something is coming close enough that an evacuation might be necessary, just do it and get ahead of the line. You'll be so much happier. Just take the day off, say I'm working from home, or whatever it is you need to do to get out of the area. And if you're wrong, well, you took a holiday. If you're right, you've got shelter and you're the first ones in the shelter.
And your patients won't be running on the last nerve.
Yeah, you won't be panicking because, oh no, it's coming. Am I going to make it? Does my car have enough gas? Am I worrying about this, worrying about that? If you're out ahead of it, if you see it coming, because some stuff you can see coming, earthquakes you can't, but major storms you can. If you see it coming and you think you're going to have to evacuate, then just do it. Or if you think you're going to have to hunker down, do that. But if you're going to have to hunker down, please get your food months ahead of time. Don't be like the person in the store with 200 of your greatest friends trying to go to the one checkout that is open. Just don't get in the mess.
We don't need another pandemic scenario.
Our son is living in Brisbane, and or 6 weeks ago we had a major storm, like a really big hurricane prediction. Cyclone, yeah, it was predicted to be. So everybody knew ahead of time, or at least a few days. So we were like, do you have enough food? And he sent us a picture of just empty shelves and he's like, yeah, it should be okay. But like by the time he kind of went, it was slim pickings, and fortunately it didn't end up being as bad, but it pretty much washed out the whole Gold Coast beach line. Like it used to be, just like dropped 10 feet. I mean, it was kind of crazy, but yeah, everybody panicked.
This is the thing with food storage. If you have your food storage, if that's something that you're already working on, then you've got stuff at home and you don't have to worry about the empty shelves. And if you're buying something for an emergency, like, oh, I think I'm going to lose power, so I'm going to buy a generator to handle losing power. Don't turn around and then return it once the emergency is over with, because you're going to have the emergency again. If you think there's going to be a disaster or something coming to you, like weather's going to come again. So whatever preparation you make, do it in such a way that you can afford it. Find a place to keep that. One of the things that tends to annoy preppers, because we're looking at this and it's like, you bought the generator. Why are you selling it on eBay? You might need it 2 years from now. Or you bought the chainsaw, or you bought, whatever it was. Don't panic buy, don't panic sell, plan it.
I think one of the hard things though is for people like young people, young adults, seniors who don't have the reserve to have, food storage and things like that. That's what's concerning for me. They're just getting by, a lot of them. Right?
This is true, in which case it's okay if you can and you see something coming, have a friend out of the area and go there. And then worry about coming back later. Let's see, we are when to evacuate human stuff. So chemical spills, explosions, structural damage. You wanted to talk about Dartmouth, Halifax.
Dartmouth, Halifax, World War I. There was 2 ships. That night, nothing was running. And one that was supposed to come in was freighted with explosives, missed it, so he was asleep on the outside. There was a small freighter going to go out. When they opened it up, the freighter with the explosives was going way too fast. And when they hit this particular part of the bend, they actually shoved themselves into each other, and it started a fire, and eventually an explosion within very short order. They evacuated both Dartmouth and Halifax. So that was number one. And for whatever the reason, before World War II comes rolling around because of this incident, any warship that comes in must take all explosives off and put it on the shore. I don't know if you've seen even a small base, how big those things are. Dartmouth is a mid-sized base, mid to large-sized base. This was during Christmas, and they got a couple U.S. warships in, plus a couple of our Canadian ones. They took the explosives off to, the base was filled to walking home. There was nothing else. A freak lightning storm took place and started setting explosives off. Again, evacuation of both Halifax and Dartmouth. Now, if you take a look at the warships we have nowadays, they got warheads that will take out one city with just one head, much less what they had back then. And that base, just go back to the base, can never be sold because they cannot accurately account for how many went off, how many didn't go off. Occasionally, right now, a deer will still walk across there and set one off. If you go near that area, they'll seize your radio, so you cannot use it because they still don't know where else the explosives.
You don't want a radio frequency to set it off.
Exactly. Not like walking along and hearing the boom right beside you.
So the picture up here is from Poland. That is a tanker truck, and it closed 6 lanes on the highway. Now, fortunately, this is actually a chocolate spill. But imagine what that would be on our highways here with the stuff that goes across, and it was one of the hazardous chemicals, chlorine or even gas, and it's built like that. And now you have lost a major artery. And if it's something that vaporizes, you're evacuated because now your air is not safe to breathe.
In evacuation, you don't actually have to, but if they're asking you to leave, leave, because there's usually a danger there. Many people stay, but now you're also putting other people at risk. Because now they got on a lot of houses, what they will do is they'll have a hangar, and it'll be red with a line through it. It's nobody there. Green, or sorry, the other way around. If it's green, there's somebody there, and if it's red, it's been evacuated. So they don't really have to pay attention to those houses as much for people that are in dire straits.
So when they, knock on your door and say you have to leave, do they have like a route for you to take? Like, or do they just expect you to get
Quite
up?
normally, they'll give you, you're going to, as an example, to Kamloops.
Okay.
You're going to take the number one, flank to number one all the way there.
Okay.
Don't hear. Some cases they'll say no, but a lot of cases you also might get it over like the radio, or your phones will start beeping and this going this area to this area must evacuate.
When they had the wildfires in the interior, I don't know how many people remember the Teshadas from Delta Ward. They moved up to the interior. Part of their family was at home. Part of their family was in Prince George, which was the next closest town. Because of where the fire was, the group that was in Prince George, they were shopping, had to evacuate south. The group that was at home had to evacuate north. The family was split. The southern group came down to Delta because they still had friends here. And the northern group went to, I forget what the next church is north of that. And sometimes that happens. You're told, not so much you're evacuating this route, but you are going north. And the other group is going south. And you are not meeting because that's where the danger is.
You just going to mention as well that there's a couple of levels of alerts. They'll do like a evacuation alert where you can go if you want to, you don't have to, but you should be prepared to leave at any time if the evacuation order comes, like a mandatory order comes in. But when the mandatory order comes in, then you have to go. And there's still people that will decide not to go. Then you don't
Do
have
they
to
give
do
time
it.
frame and there is some evacuation on them?
It depends on what's going on. If they can, we'll give you a couple of days. But sometimes it might be A fire has started down the road, you have half an hour to get out.
My friend in Fort Nelson happened. She watched it explode half hour later, telling her, get out now. They weren't sure if they could get it under control. And that was only half an hour. She watched it explode.
You know, on your phone, every once in a while you'll get an emergency alert.
Yep.
Like if a child is missing or whatever. Will, does that activate like when there's an emergency?
It depends.
Did
There is the Amber Alert, which is what you saw that evacuate, that's on your phone. Part of that system, and that's the government system, will also say, this area needs to evacuate. They might not say where or how, but they might say evacuate because they can push it to the cell phones. If you want to know what's going on in your area, that's where I've got on the screen, we've got Alertable, and you can install that on your cell phone. And you can say, I am interested in area X, Y, and Z. And I have this running on my cell phone. And with something like Alertable, you will get Highway 17 is closed because of an accident. Highway 17 is now open, and you'll get, you know, probably 17, something happens to it once a week. Or if there's a major accident on the bridge and the bridge is closed, Alertable will tell you that. Because I've asked it for traffic. It will also, because it is an alerting system, tell you all of the major ones as well. And for Alertable, you give them, in the app, you say, I am interested in these areas, and it's generally by city. So because I live pretty close to Langley, but I work in Burnaby, I've said, I want Langley and Surrey and Burnaby, and that entire corridor up to Abbotsford where my parents live. That entire corridor, I want some alerts on. So I know what's going on in case I have to do something. The other thing that I have up there is Signal and WhatsApp. As mentioned, you can call your out of area contact. And as we spoke before, we actually started recording. Given that the major event that they are expecting to happen is the Cascadia subduction zone letting loose, which goes from Southern California to Alaska and off the coast of BC. The suggestion for that is your out of area contact should not be on the West Coast. It should be on the other side of the mountains. Just because if that happens to be the event, everyone's involved in it. And you want your out of area contact to be someone who is not involved in your local event. But sometimes your phone is not going to work, but you might have data. You might have a friend who has Starlink or something like that that you can hook up to. In which case, this is where you have a chat with who your contacts are going to be, and you might look at applications like Signal or WhatsApp, which will run on tablets, computers, and cell phones, and use that to send your message. The other things you might look at is, I think they call themselves X now as opposed to Twitter, but it used to be you would go on Twitter and you would subscribe to your local police stations and see what they were announcing as what was going on in the area. Or News 1130 and see what they were announcing. So there are alternate ways of getting information. In the case of everything going not so happy, your car radio is still valid. I'm not sure what normally it's AM 530, I think. I'd have to double check. Which is posted along the highways. And that is something is going on in this area. Tune to AM 530, there would be signs for that. Not as many radios are being used for AM these days. I know when I replaced my home clock radio, I wanted something that had AM on it. It was actually quite difficult to find a model these days that still had AM. Most things have switched to FM, but AM is still the designated emergency frequency. You can also get specialized radios, emergency radios, which will do AM, FM, plus your weather bands, which have all sorts of additional announcements on it. So it's a much wider receiver so you can see what's going on. And these are some of the technology that you can use to find out what's going on to help you in the case of an emergency. Now, I have mentioned on the screen GPS for figuring out your routes. Bill showed his version of this last month. Thank you. My tongue is tripping over. This is the new version because yeah, I was doing the GPS on my phone. I actually have my car is older, so it doesn't talk to the phone. It has a built-in GPS, but that might not work. You might be separated from that. This will help you figure out where you're going if you don't have a satellite signal. These are about 25 bucks on Amazon.
Can I just add to her question about the BC emergency alert system? It has, every message on that has to meet a certain criteria. So like alerts or emergencies that are confined to a small area or like a city, they would probably choose not to put it on that alert. So you would have to go seeking the information like they were talking about, as opposed to waiting for something to pop up on the phone. It's like even with Amber Alerts, when there's a kidnapping of a child usually, there's still criteria that has to be met in order for them to activate that system, because they get a lot of pushback from the public on.
No one
the
likes an Amber
intrusion.
Alert. Some
Yeah.
people are it's like, I don't have a kid, I don't care. That's their attitude, and so they have to deal with it.
If you know something's going on somewhere, you should be looking for that information like they were talking about, as opposed to waiting for something to magically show up on the phone.
A lot of the road signs I have tell you all the information signs, will sometimes look up to an Amber Alert too. So I imagine they'd also do the same with wildfire.
Because in the states, they're really good at that, like the road signs and that.
Okay, so adapting for different emergencies. What you do, how you react is going to depend on what scenario you're dealing with. Earthquake, you will want to avoid anything that might be severely damaged, your overpasses and your bridges, which we've been harping on about. Your flood, you're avoiding lowlands. Fires, you would have to figure out where the fire is in your fire safe routes. But what we've got up here right now is the province of BC actually has tsunami maps. And this is the tsunami map of the lower mainland, where they expect in dark green that you see up there would be affected by a tsunami coming in. I only highlighted our area, but that map actually is broken up into zones A through E with various depths of waves that they're expecting in. So take over tsunamis.
As example, 9 magnitude strikes the Cascadia subduction zone along the BC coast. They figure the wave will hit within 20 minutes on Vancouver Island. And the waves are estimated at 5.9 meters, or for older guys like me, 19.5 feet. Followed by a runoff on land exceeding 12 meters. Again, for me, almost 40 feet tall. Now, you got communities such as Tofino and a few of the rest of those. They actually have tsunami warning signs. They're in blue and in white, and they'll tell you the direction you need to walk or run in this case. And I actually was there and I asked a few of the locals, how long does it take you to get from the beach to the top of the hill? They're saying 45 minutes to an hour. And a lot of these communities, they have very narrow roads, and it only takes one person to stop everything. You better be hoping that you're actually on one of those. And also to get to know people so they can also show you where to go. Keep in mind these routes will be plugged up. The tsunami impact in the lower mainland will be a whole lot less severe. A study by GeoWeb indicates that the waves in Boundary Bay could reach as high as 1 to 2 meters, between 3 and 6 feet. while the western shore of like Delta, bordering Richmond may only see a half a meter, with even smaller heights on the shoreline for north and west Vancouver. In lower mainland, while the waves heights would be lower, the tsunami could still cause problems in low-lying areas, such as where I live. Residents of the lower mainland should be aware of the potential tsunami risk and take steps to prepare, such as familiarizing themselves with evacuations or where you're going to go. I'm going up SFU. It's a mountain just right behind us. I'm going straight up that. There are alerts on. We just covered this alerts on your phones and so on. On this one site, I was actually trying to find like evacuation routes, what the plan is for my city, Burnaby, and I was actually digging and digging and digging and digging. I never actually did find a plan.
You should.
Oh, you should. Oh,
Well, I mean, most cities would.
Yeah, the business continuity plan, it's usually done between the police, fire, and the city, or fire department and the city, and it's housed in all those. Okay, like when I was the operations NCO for White Rock RCP, I wrote part of that plan, and then we all have a copy. It's sitting there, hard copy in a binder, in each of those zones.
you can't find it on the internet like I was looking for. No. I was actually looking for what would be my evacuation or what would be the procedure. And I fell down, oh, it's look here and here, and you start going down this giant rabbit hole. I spent an hour and I found nothing.
Would there be information for the general public from that, or is it just for the emergency?
No, it's our plan. Yeah, it's our response, right? It's not for what the public. We're there to guide, you know, but it's to move people from this point to this point. It's not to solve all their problems. They're like every, you know, and I think when we talked about it before, like, you know, that first 72 hours, you're probably going to cover this. Like, you need to be relying on yourself because that help is not going to come 5 minutes, 10 minutes later, or even in the same day. If you need help, you're going to be on your own for the first few days.
Yeah.
Until things get organized.
When I was running this stuff, it took us at least 72 hours to go. They gotta find the people, find the equipment, what are you taking in, and now you're getting there.
Mhm.
Going into Florida was pretty easy with hurricanes. We knew it was coming. We knew it was a place that was going to get hit. We were poised. We were waiting. We go in earthquake. It's not that easy.
Mhm.
If everything stops in Kamloops, Houston, and everything's coming from Calgary, that's still quite a bit of time to get here. Particularly if the roads are damaged. Any questions, thoughts, comments?
Returning home. And you can see
I
our
think-
before and after pictures.
So just to add to that a little bit, I think where they hesitate in making all those plans public, because it'll depend on what the emergency is and where it is. Because the plan, like say in White Rock, for example, if the emergency was down the beach on Marine Drive, the plan was very different than if it was on the top of the hill up by, you know, border with Surrey, right? So it would just be, this is what we'll get together, we'll decide what we need to do, and then, you know, make an operational plan to start to actually put in action. It's more, you know, a contingency plan depending on what the emergency is, where it is, and who's going to be in charge. The police incident and the fire incident, or the city utilities, whatever, you know, whether it's a gas leak or a fire or a hostage taking or a mass shooting or whatever, you know, whatever the emergency is, or an earthquake, you know, just kind of got to be ready for everything and then make a plan, finalize the plan, you know, when you get together and try to enact it.
Very. It's good to have you here. We're gonna talk later.
So then basically, like you said, you're just basically on your own because the fire, the police and the city, they planned for like their department, right? Like,
Yeah, I mean,
like, yeah,
what I'm saying is like the agencies, they have a plan to try to restore order and to control. It's about controlling people and trying to get them to where they need to be if they need to be moved, or better to keep them in one location. Or there may not be any escape routes. Now, what's your plan, right? And then we're going to deal with a mass of people as opposed to what you and your family are going to do and how you're going to feed them for the next 72 hours or 3 months, depending on what's happening, right?
I don't know because it was a long time ago, but when we did the self-reliance fair last year, The thing Bill and I talked together was the first 72 hours. And it wasn't really the first 72 hours. It was closer to the first 10 days.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. It's 10 to 14 days.
Yeah. And it's just because it takes that long to get people organized. And then if you look at here, we are water and bridges. And if it's an earthquake, you've got a transportation problem. And in fact, the entertaining thing was last month, a group of us on the Prepper Broadcasting Network gamed out a scenario. And the scenario which they had gone into an AI and said, give us a disaster to game out what a proper response was, happened to be the Cascadia earthquake. So it started off with building damage, it started off with floods, it started off with roads, and then it was, oh, and by the way, you're on the ring of fire. So now your volcanoes are going off, you've got ash in the air, your vehicles are not running because they can't suck in enough air to move. You're pretty much stuck where you're at. And that put a whole different complexion on the problem. So I'm hoping that when the big one happens, it is just the earthquake and not the entire ring of fire going off with it.
How many people remember Mount St. Helens going off? Well, good, there's a few people here. That ash reached Alberta. And the problem with Alberta was, but that ash, it was sucking it through the air filters and was actually cutting the motors apart. Well, it's not necessarily doesn't suck enough air, it'll just cut your motor completely apart.
Or your lungs.
Or your lungs or another one.
We were,
Mask is good.
we were north end of Vancouver Island, that's where we live, and you could smell it in the air.
And how far away is that volcano?
Yeah.
Central Oregon.
Actually, we drove by it last weekend. We went down to Portland for a wedding, and there's a portion that just before you get down to where we were going, Vancouver, Washington, you can see it. There's a couple of points on the highway where the mountain is just sitting there, and it's just this big cut right on the side, facing north. It's just crazy. It's just amazing how big it is, and how much destroyed. I grew up in Vernon, and on that day, May 18th, 1980, it got dark in Vernon and oh God, that's later on that day. It's crazy.
Here's a fun question. How many volcanoes are close to us?
Prepared to be
Rainier,
4 or 5.
Baker, Robson, one.
Outside of Mission there, it's the North State Lake. There are 7 volcanoes there. I used to drive between those. I was counting them. It's like, they kind of look a little odd. So I actually asked the question, what are those? And he said, that's a volcano, that's a volcano, that's a volcano, that's a volcano. Lovely. There's 7. And from what I understand, in the cemetery in Vancouver, there's a flat volcano right in the center of Vancouver. That's a lovely one, isn't it? So they're actually a lot closer than most people might think. Questions, comments, thoughts?
To make life even more entertaining, outside my parents' kitchen window, they can look out and see Baker. Every now and then, it's smoking. And that's not that far away either. Anyhow, so let us return home.
Yes, returning home. If you are returning to a disaster affected area, there are significant events prepared. Let's skip that. Your house may not look anything like it. Your property may be completely. So as you see in the picture here, before and after. It's not as uncommon as most people think. Earthquakes, floods, fires, whatever. Don't always expect to come home to something. But one of the things you need to do is when you are heading home is let your family and friends know that, hey, I'm heading home. It should take me about this time to get home. Make sure your tank is full of fuel. Because once again, you don't know how many gas stations are going to be open, how many of them are not. And I'm going to share a story about my mom. We called her mom gasless. She loved to be gasless. You could drive a car and you get into it, it was always on empty. I filled that thing up 3 times a week. Now, as a joke, we were heading back to Alberta and we came to Kamloops. We still got a lot of fuel, so we decided to go to the next. It was closed. Not lucky. Go to the next one, closed for the season. Oh, that's fun. We hit Revelstoke. power outage, no fuel. It's like, oh, this is just lovely. We're getting low on fuel. So as we're, can't remember how far outside the Kamloops, or sorry, not Kamloops, Golden, the gas light comes on saying we got this many kilometers and we still have this many kilometers to go. So we get to the first one, I think it was they didn't have any gas. Second one, the lineup was out onto the road. It's like, well, hold on, this is just getting fun. And we get to the last one, we actually could fill up our tank. Our tank took almost as much as, well, it took the maximum amount of fuel. So our joke was, Ma Gasless was pushing us along as a joke. But you never know when you're going to run into that kind of scenario. So always keep your tank on full. And also, as you're doing this, have some food and water with you, because again, you don't know if you're going to get stuck someplace. And I'm going to use another story of one of my roommates. When the Abbotsford flooded, they told him to go back around 7. Mudslide takes place right in front of him. Go back to where he came from. Mudslide takes place right in front of him. He was one of the guys with a cup on his car trying to catch rainwater. He had no food. He had no extra clothes with him. And despite, before he left, I kept saying, you need to take this with you. You need this. But he was one of the ones with a cup on his head. So always keep extra food, extra water. Yes, you're going home, but you never know when you're going to need it. Avoiding power lines, like down power lines. Yes, they may be dead, they may not be, but going back to what I was talking about earlier, that line can snap and it'll work just like a whip. And you can report those to the hydro company any way you like. But just make sure you report. They might get 100 reports that this line is down, but you never know, they may not have. Only use when you are at home and you can live in your home. This livable as example. Use generators and barbecues outside. It's amazing how many people suffocate every year by pulling their barbecues in the house to try and keep warm. When the Texas cold snap took place 5-6 years ago, they were not expecting that kind of cold. So people were dragging their barbecues in and many people suffocated. They died of carbon monoxide poisoning. They're trying to keep warm, but they died of it.
You can get combo fire alarm, carbon monoxide alarms now. And in fact, the one I have comes with a 10-year battery. So it's worth having some of those floating around.
And if you don't feel safe going home, they say, oh, you can go home now, just be gone with you. If you don't feel safe, don't go home. When you feel safe, then you go home. You may have kids, you may not have kids. Me, I really could care because I don't really have anybody to lose. Where somebody may have kids and mother and mother-in-law, et cetera, that might be a little bit more vulnerable. Don't let anybody push you into going home if you do not feel safe. Any thoughts, questions, comments?
When I was actually on camp, so this is about the carbon monoxide. I think I was about 14, and we're all like up inside the cabin. It's like 11 o'clock at night, and they had the kerosene lamps, like 2 or 3 of them. And people were, I remember thinking to myself, people were very, very slow. They were moving slow. Everybody just looked like they were tired. They were people just laying around. And some people were playing a game, some of the adults as well. And they were very slow as well. So I had a thought, maybe it's carbon monoxide. So I decided to open the door and go outside, and I remember breathing the fresh air and then feeling a little bit more weight. And it was surprising to me. I didn't know for sure that it was carbon monoxide, but at the time, we had an alarm there, a carbon monoxide alarm that kept beeping actually every now and then. And then at one point, one of the leaders actually went over to it and pulled it out of the wall because it was annoying him. So, but seriously, it's what happens to their minds when people don't have that type of training. Is that like it's asphyxiation? I think that's the term. They can't think as well. So I actually went up to them and said, I tried to tell them, hey, maybe it's carbon monoxide, and so they kind of mumbled something to me. But at that time, I was the one person who went outside, and everybody else was kind of laying around like they're just falling asleep. So I think it's also something that people need to know how to recognize when they're not feeling themselves, or they're also like they can't move their hand or something. That means something's wrong.
And be aware enough to actually notice that too.
Yep.
If you have a thought like that, act on. It was just like, nobody else is going to act on it like you did.
I mean, it took me like less than 30 seconds. Like I just double checked. And I was fine and everybody else was fine. But if I didn't double check, then it could have been more serious.
Very serious.
Do you have to go home or do you have to call your insurance company to find a place for me to sleep?
Well, that might happen too. Hey, I got home and I got a stack of bricks here. But keep in mind, the insurance company is very slow to react. Oh, well.
Everybody's funny.
Exactly.
Well, again, this is why last month we did the binder for your insurance company, your insurance number, your contact number, because again, when I mentioned if you think you might have to evacuate, if you doubt, get out now, get ahead of everyone. You don't want to be in the middle of the pack. If you think there's going to be a pack, get in front of it. For insurance company, you've got the phone number, you've got your insurance, you're not fumbling for that. So again, you can get in front of the pack.
Like the brother Sear said, an alert. You might have to evacuate. That's a good time to leave.
You don't have to stay.
I was just gonna say, like, being prepared to take care of yourself is the best plan, because I remember, I remember it was probably about 7 or 8 years ago now, with the big Five Corners fire in White Rock. There was a fire, one building caught on fire and caught the building next to it, which was much larger fire. And there was about, it wound up like the entire, well, the one building was under construction, but the other one, there's probably 800 people that lived in this one building. They were all out of a home. And I was going to these regular meetings, updating, what was going on from the investigation and all that kind of stuff. But there was people that were still, the insurance companies will give you a little bit. They're not going to take care of you forever, right? The strata still expects you to pay your bills. The mortgage bank still expects you to pay your mortgage for a building that's not there anymore. You need to have a financial and physical plan to take care of yourself. Because the government is, they'll try to provide assistance and help, but it's always limited.
And like my friend from Fort Nelson, every couple of days you got to renew that if you're staying in the shelter too. Take care of yourself. Any thoughts, comments, questions? You usually should say
Well,
something.
no, I was just gonna say, well, that's the whole reason it's like self-reliance, right?
Yeah.
We know, we fortunately live in a community in a country where there is a great infrastructure to help at some point, but ultimately it's on us to be prepared.
Well, and one of the things about infrastructure, and great infrastructure that we've got here, is that it's also aging infrastructure. So one of the things to be self-reliant is to develop your own infrastructure so you know what's going on with it. It's a trite saying, but it's true. God helps those who help themselves. If you are prepared, that gives him more to work with.
It also gives you peace of mind, right?
Exactly. I mean, I had the egg story from when we had COVID where, seriously, I'm going grocery shopping. There are no eggs in the shelf and I'm freaking out. And it's like, but wait, I do have powdered eggs at home because I do have my, food storage. I have eggs, calm down. But I literally had to think that through and say, stop. There's no need for me to panic because I am already prepared. But when I was there in the grocery store, I was beginning to go, oh no, what do I do?
Also being prepared like that, go back to the pandemic. I walked up to the store, couldn't figure out why there was a lineup on Walmart. I said, I'd help this on home. But it also allows you to help other people. There was a couple of people at work there, they were, oh no, we're gonna run out of TP. It's like, okay, first of all, chill. And I asked a couple of questions. Number one is, how many do you go through a week? She had a small family, so I think it was 2 or 3 a week. I said, great. So how many do you have at home? And she said 30 or 40. It's like, so you got enough for this many weeks. And you can see the panic leave their face. But we also, last year, again, being prepared. Last year, the year before, we had that freeze up. And my neighbor panicking out in the hallway, and I just so happened I was coming out, and he said, we got no water. He was absolutely panicking. So I said, chill. reach behind my door and hand them some water and see the panic in this place. If you are prepared, you can help yourself, but you can also help those in life. If ye are prepared, you shall not fear. Any more comments, thoughts, questions?
Any from anyone online if you want. Okay,
I was in Idaho in Mount St. Helens and there was an inch of ash on our car in the morning. Yeah, I believe that.
okay, since I'm not hearing anything, anyone want to offer a closing prayer? And we'll call it. Sure.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we're grateful for the opportunity that we have to be here tonight, and we're grateful for Patricia and Bill and for all of their hard work in preparing for these meetings each month. And pray, Heavenly Father, that we will be able to, each of us, do our part and with our neighbors and our family to be able to help us to become more prepared and more self-reliant. And Heavenly Father, we pray that we will be able to have peace and safety as we go home this evening. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen.
Next month is on making your house a little bit more earthquake resilient.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so
This
much.
is
Yes.
A lot of useful information.
29, I looked it up. And that's big.
Okay. So small.
So, you were. What do you think?
Hi, how are you?
I never answered the phone.
No, it was good. Yeah, I mean, it's tough because my world is not about this. Like, you know, when responsibilities I have at work. Because mine is about controlling people and, you know, and keeping a lid on things. It's
Stop.
getting
There
people
we go.
out
Have some
or
stuff.
moving them from one.
So
place.
thank you
It's like,
for
no,
attending.
this is trying to get it on
Appreciate it.
for us because